Steve Does Art Stuff. My name is Julie and I'm here to impart some knowledge to you today via a 2-minute art tip. And today's tip is called It's Different Every Single Time. Recently, a friend of mine, a very dear friend of mine, asked me to place my artwork in her brand new retail store. And she placed a huge order for stuff and I was panicking. So I turned my whole house into a major production area and was making cards and paintings and stuff like this, but especially with the greeting cards, I was having to churn out a lot of them. And I knew I had another upcoming show like just a few weeks after that. So there, I might as well just get as many out as I possibly could. So I really finalized the designs that I wanted to go with and then started making 3, 4, or 5 of the exact same card at the exact same time. And it was really, really interesting because doing like little teeny one-offs is not practical when you're talking about mass production. Everybody knows that, but I thought there was a lot that could be learned from this process because I learned a lot when I was making these small paintings. And because basically all of my note cards are just original little watercolors, and so I was doing 5 at a time, but I thought I'd show you 3 at a time and show you how much you can really learn from executing the same basic design premise over and over again, in repetition, where you learn about like what you think works best and how none of them turn out exactly the same, even though you're going for that kind of. But they never do. They dry at different rates. You're coming back to a certain area. Your brush isn't as charged as it was on the other one or whatever it is. And there's just kind of a beauty in it when you're doing multiples at a time like this. So I wanted to show you how exactly I do these things and how much, kind of subtlety comes from just this kind of playing around. So we're going to incorporate several little techniques into this that we have covered in some other videos, and I wanted to show you how these work. So we have some Kilimanjaro 140-pound cold pressed natural white that I have hand deckled myself. This takes forever. Not going to play like it doesn't, but I have to hand tear all of these, but I love the way they look so much I can't help myself. So we have 3 panels of that already laid out here. One I've already spilled some stuff on. It's okay. And then what I'm going to do is I have a tray full of Fine-Tec metallic watercolor that I absolutely love. And because Fine-Tec is so dense, what I'm going to do is actually take my brush, which is a Neptune size 6 Quill, and I'm going to pre-moisten these watercolor pans with a little bit of water because they do take a while to activate, and so we're going to just let them cook a little bit before we get started. So I already have kind of an idea in my head about what I want to do. So we're going to go ahead and get started and do a couple of things all at once. So we're going to wet my brush here. And then I'm going to grab some of this just regular metallic gold that's by Fine-Tec here. And as you can see, I love this color a lot. There's basically a big old hole in it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay down just a wet wash of this color. As you can see, it does take a little while for them to activate. I'm going to take this and I'm just going to lay down a block of watercolor. And if you haven't been watching 2-minute art tips here lately, you may not know that Julie is currently in a watercolor abstract mode. I haven't been painting much that's, realistic here in watercolor in a while, or representative. But I'm actually using my brush and grabbing this gold wash, and I'm laying a little wet rectangle down in each one of these pieces of paper, which are about, 3 by 4, something like that. And so we're going to make them all pretty consistent. So they each have this gold, light gold wash of wet watercolor on each panel that we've laid down with our brush. And now we're going to set our brush, or rinse it out really quick in our wash water and set it aside. Now I have what's basically a walnut picker, and I'm just you can use any kind of sharp object for this. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a little sgraffito into this wet watercolor. It doesn't have to be crazy detailed. This is just a textural element. And what I'm going to do is add more gold watercolor on top of this. So I've done the first panel where I'm basically just making little scratch marks into the watercolor wash that's already laid down, and the pigment will settle into these dark lines. And I could make my wash really, really dark, and then the lines would be, these little scratches that I'm making with this tool would be darker. Or you can make it light like this, and so therefore the most of this detail will be light, and then some of it will be dark. So what we're going to do is charge our brush with a little bit of water, grab some more gold paint, and I'm just actually just going to drop passages of this gold onto the surface with, you know, some design concept, but not a lot. You know, I'm just kind of letting stuff happen. And this extra gold pigment is going to settle into those scratches that we've made, and they're going to show up. And in the area where the wash was a little bit lighter, they're not going to be obvious at all. And so now we're going to clean our brush out a little bit, and then I'm going to pick up some Coastal Fog. I really, really like this color. I like that it's got some opacity to it. And I'm going to lay that down. Again, you're going to be able to see where some of that pigment lays into the sgraffito that we've done already. I'm going to let that happen, do whatever it's going to do. And it's getting a little soupy. It's getting really wet on these cards. That's okay. I like that the color runs around a little bit. We're continuing to pick up more color with our brush. This is Coastal Fog, which is kind of a toned greenish gray that I like a whole lot. And, you know, we may have an overly charged brush, or we're going to drop some color, continue to drop color into those wet areas and let it run around. Now, I'm going to clean my brush out, get that color to go away. And as you can see, we've already got some variations here. We have one where you can really see the sgraffito showing through in these two color combinations of the gold and the Coastal Fog. This one, you kind of can see it in places a little bit. And then this one, we had so much pigment in here, and the paper's kind of buckling up again because it's 140 and it's not like taped down or anything. The color is pooling at the edges. Hey, whatever, that's cool too. So I'm going to actually grab some Pat's Coastal Fog, which is kind of is a Pat's Coastal Blue, sorry. And this one's really, really nice. So I have a really, really wet brush here, and I've charged my brush with the Pat's Coastal Blue, and I'm gonna just drop this into the wet areas. And then we've also got some kind of areas at the bottom that have already begun to dry. So the way that these two colors behave together is completely different, because one is really, really wet and the other one is dry, and so it does different things in different areas. So we're continuing to pick up more color and apply that to the surface. And again, the pigment is dropping into the scratches that we've made into our watercolor paper here, and they're really pretty. Got some like little happy accidents happening here, and we're going to go back and charge our brush again and do the same thing. And see, this color is it's got a lot of opacity. It has a smokiness to it, so it's kind of like a greenish gray, which is really, really pretty. I want to darken some of these up, so I'm going to just drip color into these areas so I don't wash all my good pigment out. Now, everything's really, really wet and kind of all running around, and that's fine with me, but the next couple of colors that I want to apply, I want to have a little bit more defined edge. And the way that we do that is that we wait for our paper to dry so that there's not so much possibility for your color to run. So we're going to give this a little bit of a minute. It shouldn't take more than a couple, and we're going to let this dry and come back to it and add some of our final layers. So we'll be right back. Hello, we are back again. We are mostly dry, dry enough to where we can proceed. And what we're going to do is add some more color in here and do some stuff. But I think already we can see the point that I'm making is that here are 3 cards. We're doing them the exact same way, the exact same time, and we're getting 3 completely different results from them, and that's totally fine. It's totally fine with me. It may not be completely fine with you. Now, if we were taking a more regimented approach with like a little bit more dry brush application, yes, we would be able to control the outcome a whole lot more. That's not my deal. Like I don't really, not as interested in that for my own work. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a few more color layers. So I'm going to wet my brush again in our water, and I'm going to grab some Peacock blue just because I love it and it's bright and it's gorgeous. It makes me happy, and I'm going to lay this in here. And again, where some of this color is still a little bit moist from the other stuff that we did, some areas are drier. You're going to get a little bit of different reaction. We're getting a little bit of feathering. Some of the sgraffito scratches are actually pulling some of the pigment and dragging it different places. And that's cool too. I like it. It's pretty. And we're going to put some color in here. Grabbing some more Peacock blue with my just damp brush. And we're basically loading this area with pigment. We're going to darken this up. And then I go back again and grab some more color. Now you'll notice on this particular one, we've had a little bit of puddling with this color, and when I drop this in here, it's probably going to run everywhere and get a little crazy. Not that worried about it. It's okay. But I'm going to drop that in, and you can already see stuff's happening. This one's running off the edge. I'm not that worried. Now we're going to clean out our brush in our wash water bucket here. Now this brush is really, really wet. And I think for our next little thing, I'm going to take it down a notch and grab some darker color. And I am going to grab, actually, I'm going to do a little bit of a weird thing. We're going to charge this brush, and I'm grabbing some indigo, and I'm charging it with a little bit of shadow. So we have a weird smoky blue-purple mixture, and we're going to bring that in and drop it in here. Now, because this brush isn't as wet and loaded as the other one was, we have a lot more control with what we're doing. We're bringing that into this painted area and letting it be. So again, taking our moist brush and grabbing some shadow and some indigo, mixing those loosely together. I'm not all that concerned with like total consistency in the color, so if I get a little bit of variation, that's fine with me too. We're dropping that color in there, and we're going to pick up more color to do this last one. It's a little bit dry, so we're grabbing some water, picking up color, letting it blend on the palette, and then coming back here and laying in on our card. And as you can see, got a little bit more of an indigo, you know, concentration on one side and a shadow concentration on the other. That's cool. Whatever. Now, one of the things that kind of got lost in transition here was my Pat's Coastal Fog. So now that I've got this smaller brush, I'm going to grab some more color, and this is going to be a heavier load on the brush, and we're going to come back in and drop some more of that color back in here again, because it kind of got lost in translation here, and I didn't want it to. I really, really like this, the opacity of it and the subtlety of it. And yes, it's going to take some of the feathering out of some of the cool stuff that was happening with this second card, but I really, really want this color to be here. So we're going to let that happen. And like I said, we're getting just a little bit of water, but we're really supercharging this brush with lots of color and putting this Pat's Coastal Fog back in here, and creating these kind of, they're kind of organic rectilinear shapes, I guess is the way you would describe them, because yes, they're kind of squares, they're kind of rectangles, they kind of overlap, but because they're watercolor, they have a gentleness to them. They're not so hard, and I've always kind of liked that about watercolor. And I'm kind of defining my edges a little bit because the way I want my shapes to interact. And as you can see, we got some totally different crazy stuff happening. I'm going to clean out my brush. And then, now that I've gotten my, my Fine-Tec moistened up here, I'm going to grab it because this will be nice and buttery soft. Look, ooh, it's beautiful. We have a wet brush. We have some wet watercolor in this pan. And you can see this color is just gorgeous. It's kind of like, kind of gold, kind of copper, but indecisive, just the way I like it. So what I do is I kind of make these loose, wet, washy lines. And since we've got like, the paper is damp, it's not completely fixed. We have a couple of different things going on where the color is interacting, the colors are interacting, melding, kind of mushing together with each other. And I really like that. And what you'll see is that I like to kind of dab the color wet into wet on these and let them kind of do their own thing. So we're going to grab some more color with our brush and come back into our wet surfaces and see what happens. And still, we have some really, really cool sgraffito stuff that's happening underneath there where the color has kind of sunk it into that cotton fiber in some interesting ways. And they're really, really pretty. And I really like the Fine-Tec because this wet in wet technique, it is so forgiving and so pretty, and they don't kind of overtake. They kind of work with the colors that they're with. And it's kind of unusual for metallics because some of the metallics just go nuts and they take over everything. But these have a subtlety about them, and they're not so harsh that they don't integrate well with other things that are going on. So you can incorporate them without having them take over everything that's going on. And they're really, really pretty. So we have some, yes, they're linear shapes, but they're subtle and they're not completely overboard. That one was that kind of coppery color I was telling you about, this gold, but then I've got this other like more burnt copper color. Let's see, it doesn't have a label on it, but it's from Fine-Tec. I use it a lot. It's a very, very smoky kind of taupe copper color. And I will just kind of charge that into what's already laid down in these wet areas and kind of let them do their thing. It integrates well with the other stuff that's going on. We're gonna wet our brush a little bit and grab some more color and let that go. Now, I have some kind of hard edges I don't like that happened in this area here and kind of over here. So what I'm doing is I cleaned out my brush. I'm charging it with a little bit of water. I'm going to back into those areas and soften that up because they're not my favorite. I don't love it. And this right here is on my nerves. So we're going to take that brush and soften this. And if I get a bloom, that's okay. I'm all right. Now, what I may do later on is touch all of these up with a little bit of gold pen, or maybe even a little bit of gold foil or copper foil. Copper foil, ooh, that'd be great. And just give them a little zing. They do have to be completely dry in order to get to those next steps. So this will kind of get you started and give you an idea of the concept that I'm talking about, but how kind of exploring the idea of exploring one idea and multiple times is kind of a fascinating thing, and how fun it can be. You'll see all these. We'll post pictures of these when these are all done, but this will get you well on your way, and so you can kind of understand what we're talking about. We hope this was helpful to you and hope that you enjoy.